So, writers' conferences. If you're a newer writer or a younger writer, you may have heard this term thrown around before, but you're not exactly sure what the point is. Or maybe you have no idea what this is. What is a writers' conference? I was like that about 2 years ago, and since then, I've come on a long journey where I've come to understand what these are and what the purposes are, and so I wanted to share with you a little bit about writers' conferences, what they are, what the point is. So, let's dive in. Before we get started, make sure to click the subscribe button and drop a like. And let's get on with the video. So, what are writers' conferences? I had no idea what a writers' conference was, what the point was, until I joined the Author Conservatory. And then I started hearing this term thrown around before. And I had gone to homeschool conferences, and then I had gone to business conferences in the past, and then writers' conferences. So, what was a writers' conference? Obviously, it's a conference, and you know what that is. But why for writers? What do you do? I wasn't sure if I actually needed a writers' conference. I was getting all sorts of training at the Author Conservatory, and it was awesome, but why do I need a writers' conference? It seems like a large investment, so why do I need this? What is the point? Thing is that writers' conferences are crucial for us authors who want to go traditionally published. They are a gathering of writers and agents and editors, all sorts of people that are professionals in the industry. It's a chance for us younger writers or newer writers to learn from experienced authors and learn different industry things. During my first writers' conference, I felt like a fish out of water. I had no idea what they were talking about. They just talk about the industry things in ways that I had never been before, because I have never been in a group of writers that is actually professional and is devoted to that sort of thing. So for me, I felt slightly awkward because I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know all the publishers' names. I don't know what they publish. But since then, I've been able to really dive into that world, and I feel like I really have come to an understanding of what everything means and familiarize myself with it. But it would not have started had I not gone to that conference and felt so strange because I don't know what they're talking about. So it's so important to go and to just be enveloped in the industry and figure out what is going on. And through that feeling of awkwardness, you come to realize what they're talking about, how it feels, and you start to familiarize yourself with that sort of world and that language that they use. But the point of writers' conferences isn't only to learn. So there's all sorts of sessions you can attend where they discuss things like deep POV, how to write novels, how to market yourself, how to create social media, how to do email marketing, things like that. But the whole point of writers' conferences isn't all to learn. A big part of it is to network. And networking basically means meeting other authors, meeting other agents, meeting editors, and being familiar with the people in your industry. And it's really neat because through that you come out with different connections to different authors, and you maybe start a critique group, and you maybe meet a different author and you join them in a social media pursuit. I don't know. There's all sorts of different opportunities that come through different writers' conferences where you're interacting with other authors and becoming friends with them. What I really appreciate is that when you go to a writers' conference, you really are engaging with the serious writers, because writers' conferences are not cheap. So it kind of weeds out the hobby writers and the people that aren't as serious, so that you're left with the people that really are devoted to their craft, the published authors, and the people that are big in the industry. You can also learn from the writers that you talk with. Make sure that you don't discredit writers. Don't go just to learn from agents and editors. You can learn a ton from writers as well, and they know it from a different perspective because they've gone through it. So make sure that you do take advantage of those relationships. Don't just brush them off because they're authors and you came to talk to editors and agents because you want to get your book published. There's so much that you can learn from other authors about the industry, about the agents, about the editors, and how they went through that process. So don't discredit them because they're authors, because they're writers. Make sure that you learn from them, learn whatever they are willing to teach you. Another big reason why people go to writers' conferences is to pitch. So these are appointments with different agents and editors where you get to sit down with them one-on-one and actually pitch them your novel with the goal of coming out with a manuscript request or a book proposal request. And those are really cool because it's one-on-one. You get to say whatever you want. You have that amount of time where you can talk to them, where you can pitch to them, where you can ask questions, and it's a really, really awesome opportunity that you don't really get elsewhere. It's also a really great chance for you to learn how to pitch your book. and how to present yourself in a professional manner. So not always do you come out with a book proposal request or a manuscript request. Obviously, that would be your desire if you're trying to go that route, but it doesn't always happen like that. But that's okay. You have to understand that when you pitch, it's not that they always reject your book. Yes, sometimes it's not there, it's not ready, or it's not a great story. But for the most part, it's usually because they're trying to fill a slot and your book probably doesn't fit in that slot. I know of countless authors who have pitched hundreds of times and gone to like dozens and dozens of writers' conferences where they've been rejected. And then finally they come through and they have a breakthrough and then they are published like 50 books. But it's not because they're a bad writer or because their story sucks. It's because the agent or the editor had a slot to fill and their book didn't quite meet the quota. So if your book doesn't get a request, that doesn't mean it's a failure. That doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means there's not a slot to fill. So what I find to be really important is just to talk to the agent, talk to the editor, and ask them what they found unique about your story. Did they find something unique about your story? And then you can develop those pitch materials so that you're drawing more on what they found unique. And you can also see if they think there is a spot in the industry for your book. And through that, through pitch appointments and through networking, you get really good about talking about your book. And that is super important as an author, to develop your hook, to develop your tagline, to develop an elevator pitch where you can spout off the information about your book, what makes it interesting in like 1 minute, and grab people's attention with it. Obviously, you're going to be doing horrible on your first time. I can still remember my first writers conference where somebody asked me about my book and I just stuttered my way through like a way too long explanation that did not make sense, and the lady just smiled at me and we kind of moved on. And you're probably going to do that your first time, and that's okay. It happens like that. You have to start somewhere. But the more you talk about your books in an environment where everyone's talking about their books and excited about writing in books, the more you're going to get better at it. So how do you find a writer's conference that is good for you? A big thing, look at your genre. Do you write historical fiction? Do you write fantasy? Do you write sci-fi? You're going to go to different writers' conferences based on what genre you write. And then look at your audience. Do you write Christian fiction or do you write general market? Where do you envision yourself being published? If you're trying to go general market, it doesn't make sense for you to go to Christian writers' conferences because that's not where the interactions happen. So make sure that you know how you want to be published and then go find writers' conferences for that. Look at your location. It doesn't always make sense for you to want to do a writers' conference 200,000 miles away in the West Coast or something. So make sure that you are looking at your location and what's actually feasible. And then obviously look at the cost or the financial investment that it takes to actually go to a writers' conference. These things are not cheap. So make sure that you're diving into that. And there's just all sorts of writers' conferences. So don't feel like you have to spend $10,000 to go to a great writers' conference. You can go to one for a lot cheaper, and it can be a really great gathering of writers. So I'd love to talk to you more about writers' conferences. If you have any questions, make sure to drop them down below in the comments, and I'd love to discuss them there. Until then, make sure that you subscribe for more writing advice, and I can't wait to see you next video.